nails and hair of the integumentary system provide a barrier between the environment and tissues and organs within the body. The skin is the largest organ in the body. It absorbs nutrients, regulates internal body temperature, and eliminates waste. The epidermis is the outermost layer of skin that provides a barrier between the body and the surrounding environment. The dermis is the middle layer of skin. Sensory nerve receptors in the dermis respond to touch and pass signals to nerves of the peripheral nervous system. Sweat glands reduce body temperature by releasing sweat. Sebaceous glands produce an oily substance that lubricates skin and provides protection from bacteria. Blood and lymphatic vessels in the dermis supply the skin. The hypodermis is the deepest, fatty layer of skin tissue. It is in contact with the muscles underneath it.
The nervous system includes the brain, spinal cord, and nerves throughout the body. Inside these structures are special nervous system cells that can conduct electrical signals and pass information rapidly throughout the body. Bodily functions, muscle movements, and the transmission of sensory information are coordinated by the brain sending information throughout the body, and peripheral nerves sending information to the brain. The peripheral nervous system coordinates involuntary functions like heart rate and respiration. It controls voluntary and sensory functions, including the sensation of special sensory information. All nerves involved in the voluntary control of skeletal muscles are part of the somatic system of the peripheral nerve. Voluntary are the thymus and spleen, along with a network of lymph vessels, ducts, and nodes, form the lymphatic system that protects the body by removing pathogens. Tissues in the body are surrounded by lymphatic vessels and capillaries of the circulatory system. As water and substances are exchanged between tissues and the bloodstream, unwanted substances enter the lymphatic network and travel towards nodes. Groups of lymph nodes are located at the axilla, groin, neck, and in the intestinal region. The nodes are filled with lymphocytes, the body's defense cells. These cells support immunity by eliminating pathogens that can cause infections. Clean lymphatic fluid travels towards the thoracic cavity and re-enters the bloodstream.
Digestion begins when food is taken through the mouth, mixed with saliva, and chewed. Structures in the oral cavity work together to break food down into a small mass called a bolus. During the process of swallowing, the tongue rises to the roof of the mouth, directing the bolus out of the oral cavity. The bolus then passes from the oropharynx to the pharynx and into the esophagus. Involuntary muscular contractions, called peristaltic waves, move the bolus down the esophagus and into the stomach. Peristaltic waves continue the mechanical breakdown of food in the stomach. Digested food, mixed with digestive enzymes and acids secreted by the stomach, is called chyme. Enzymes in the small intestine further the chemical process. A small amount of nutrient absorption occurs in the stomach, but most absorption occurs as chyme travels through the sections of the small intestine. The walls of the small intestine are lined with structures that absorb nutrients from chyme and then pass these nutrients into the bloodstream. Some absorption continues in the large intestine. As indigestible waste moves through the structures of the large intestine, it is compacted. The elimination of indigestible waste completes the digestive process.
Inhaled air and ingested nutrients both pass through the oropharynx behind the oral cavity. A cartilaginous structure called the epiglottis directs food and fluid away from the trachea and into the esophagus, preventing inhalation of this material. The stem of the epiglottis attaches to the anterior rim of the thyroid cartilage. The superior portion of the epiglottis moves freely and can swing up or down like a trapdoor. With each swallow, the larynx rises and the epiglottis folds down over the laryngeal opening, closing off the airway. If particles make their way into the trachea, the cough reflex pushes air forcefully up through the larynx, forcing the particles back up and out. The endocrine system is composed of glands that regulate body functions, like the body's reaction to the environment, the level of substances in the blood, metabolism and growth, immune responses, and sexual development and function. Each gland secretes chemical messengers called hormones directly into the bloodstream. Hormones dissolve into blood plasma and travel to specific body regions where they pass through the blood vessel walls and bind to targeted cells. It is by altering the function of individual cells that these hormones can influence the activity of the body's individual tissues and organs. Seeing begins when light waves enter the front of the eye. Brightness and distinct colors are first interpreted by structures in the back of the eye and then sent as stimulus signals that the brain interprets as vision. On the exterior of the eye is an area called the cornea that includes a pupil, a hole through which light enters the eye. Inside the eye, light is refracted by a lens and focused onto the retina, a layer of receptors that lines the inside of the eye. The retina includes two types of nervous system cells: cones that interpret color of light waves and rods that interpret the intensity of light. These photoreceptors process information into nerve signals that travel through the optic nerve into the occipital lobe of the brain.
Process of olfaction, or smelling, begins with hair-like cilia that line the nasal cavity. This lining is called the olfactory epithelium. As air enters the nasal cavity, some chemicals in the air bind to and activate nervous system receptors on the cilia. This stimulus sends a signal to the first-order neurons connected to the epithelial cells. The signal is carried by these neurons from the nasal cavity through openings in the ethmoid bone and then to the olfactory bulbs of the brain. The signals then move from the olfactory bulbs along the olfactory tracts to the olfactory area of the cerebral cortex.
The process of hearing involves sound waves creating mechanical motions that cause fluid in the ear to move in waves and trigger nerve impulses that the brain interprets as sound. The outer ear functions to funnel sound waves. The vibrations from these waves reach the middle ear and move the tympanic membrane, also called the eardrum. This causes three bones, called the auditory ossicles, to also move. The bones make contact with a fluid-filled structure in the inner ear called the cochlea. The mechanical movements of the auditory ossicles move fluid inside the cochlea. Fluid waves move hair cells that line the cochlea. The movement of these cells activates nervous system receptors. Signals are carried through the vestibulocochlear nerve, cranial nerve 8, to the temporal lobe of the brain, where they're interpreted as sound.